Hello and welcome to Cloud Security Masterclass. Today we are diving into a recently released AWS security feature called Resource Control Policies or RCPs. I'll walk you through a real-world security example to show you how RCPs differ from other types of limiting policies like service control policies or SCPs, and why you should seriously consider implementing RCPs in your AWS organization. Resource control policies, or RCPs, are a type of limiting policy. What do I mean by limiting policy? Limiting policies do not grant any new permissions to identities. Instead, they act as guardrails. They can only restrict what an identity is allowed to do. Now, RCP isn't the only type of limiting policy in AWS. There are others too. In fact, as of today, there are 4 different types of limiting policies in AWS, including RCPs. The key difference between these policies is the level at which they apply permissions to, or let's just say apply restrictions to. So permission boundaries are applied at an IAM user or role level, so they're applied to a specific identity only. The session policies are applied to a specific session for a specific IAM role. So again, it's a very specific type of restriction. The service control policies and your resource control policies, they are, however, applied at an organization, an AWS organization, or organizational unit, or an entire AWS account. So these are very high level comprehensive security guardrails. So the only way you can see service control policies and resource control policies is from the management AWS account, right? This is the account with which you have signed up for AWS organizations. You won't be able to see these policies from any other AWS account. And if you don't know what AWS organizations is, or you're interested in learning more about it, take a look at my demo on this topic. I will link that demo in this video, but I will keep policies here. And from the AWS organization section, we could see the service control policies here, and we can also see the resource control policies here. Now the RCPs are currently in disabled state. We will be enabling it and using it as part of this demo. So as you saw, SCPs and RCPs are different from permission boundary and session policy because they are applied at an AWS organization level. They don't even show up in the IAM section. But even though they look pretty similar in scope, they solve different problems. Let's see how AWS documents this difference between SCP and RCP. For SCP, AWS says that it defines maximum available permissions for IAM users or roles in your organization, whereas RCPs define the maximum available permissions for resources in the organization. This sounds simple, right? But here's the thing. When you write an SCP, you are essentially or ultimately restricting access to a resource. So how is it different from an RCP? To use RCPs effectively, we need to understand how they are different from SCPs, not just in terms of syntax, but in terms of what they are designed to protect. To explain this difference, we need to go just one level deeper and look at the difference between IAM-based permissions, which are attached to users and roles, versus resource-based permissions like S3 bucket policies that are applied to resources. I think it would be much easier if we see this difference in a demo. So let's take an example that I think everybody of you who are in security must be very familiar with. Let's imagine a centralized logging bucket in an AWS account. And for security compliance, we never want the logs contained within this bucket to be deleted ever. So what do we do? How do we create a guardrail for this in AWS? The easiest solution for us would be to create a service control policy that denies object deletion from this bucket to all identities. So let's see the scenario. Let's see how we can use SCP for this guardrail with a quick demo. All right, so I have logged in to one of the child accounts within my management AWS account, within my AWS organizations. Please note that this is not the management account. And the reason for that is because you can't apply an SCP or an RCP on the management account. You can only apply it to the child accounts within that management account or AWS organizations. So I'm just creating this demo logging bucket here called central logging bucket CSM demo, and I'm copying some demo objects within it, some demo log files just for the purposes of this demonstration. And with that, my bucket is created and my objects are uploaded into it. And we are going to be using this S3 bucket to demonstrate the how we can apply Guardrail to it using SCP. So in the interest of saving time for the demo, I have pre-created the SCP that we'll be applying to this account. And the account with which we are applying the SCP is this account called CSM account 2. And that's the same account where the bucket, the resource is created. So in the policies, you could see service control policies, and we have the demo deny delete object SCP, which has already been applied. Let me click on it and show you what this policy contains. So the effect here is deny, right? And the action for which this effect is applied is the S3 delete object, and it's applied to the central logging bucket CSM demo and all the objects within it. So if this SCP is doing its job correctly, it would deny any access attempts on this bucket that specifically do the delete object. Right? So as I said, this policy has been pre-created and applied to this account. Let me go back to the console, to the command line now, and show you if this policy is working as expected. All right, so the command that we'll be using to delete the object within the bucket is the s3rm command. And I'm using the recursive flag here to be able to delete all objects within this S3 bucket. Now, the identity that I'm using for this is the root user for that account. So it should have all the access within that AWS account. And as you can see, I'm denied from doing this. And the reason for denial is because there is an explicit deny in a service control policy. And so our SCP is working as expected. Okay, now you must be thinking, if the SCPs are working as expected, why do we even need an RCP? Right? If SCP is doing this job, why do we need to define a resource control policy? So here's something to think about. What happens if someone adds a bucket policy or a resource policy to allow access to this logging bucket from a completely different AWS account? Since that external user is not part of your SCP scope, would the SCP deny that external user's access? Let's find out. All right, so I'm logged into the AWS account where I had created the S3 bucket, and I'm going to click on this bucket called Central Logging Bucket CSM Demo, and I will be updating the bucket policy or the resource policy for this bucket, and I'll be providing access to an external user, meaning the user is not from this account, it's from a different AWS account, and I'll be giving it the S3 star permission, meaning that the user would be allowed to do any operations on this bucket, right? And in the resource, I'm mentioning the name of the bucket plus all the objects within this bucket. So with this bucket policy, I'm going to click on save and save this bucket policy. And yes, now the bucket policy is applied. Now I'm going to switch over to my command line, and I'm going to attempt to do the same action of delete objects as I was doing earlier, but now with this cross account user. Okay, I would also like to add that this user, I've already provided it admin permissions in the AWS account, and you need to do that. It needs to have S3 permissions from that AWS account also for it to be able to get cross account privileges. So with that, now I'm going to run the remove command, and as you can see, I'm able to delete the objects now, even when the SCP has been applied as a guardrail in the from the organizational AWS account. All right, so I was able to bypass the guardrails put in place with SCP by crafting a resource policy that grants external access to an identity external to my organization. So we can deduce from this little experiment that SCPs only apply to identities within the org. And if you're only relying on SCPs as your guardrails, then you might miss protecting against misconfigurations that might result due to incorrectly configured resource policy. And that is the reason why you also need an RCP as part of your guardrails design. Let's see that now. All right, I'm back in the management database account, and we are going to create the resource control policy now. So I'll be going to the policies section and click on RCPs here. They are currently disabled. So first I'm going to enable them. Once this is enabled, I'm going to there is a default allow all here, which is called RCP full access. So as you can see, it's giving star 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 to everything, allow all. And what we're going to do now is create RCP policy, which is exactly similar to the SCP policy that we created earlier. We're going to give it a name, and I have already pre-created this policy here in the interest of time. But this is how the RCP policy looks like. Again, it's exactly similar to SCP with one minor and very important difference, if you can spot it. But it's doing the effect of deny. The action itself is the S3 delete object, similar to the SCP, and the resources is the same, the S3 bucket, right? The one important difference here from the SCP, if you could spot it, is that RCP also has a principal tag. So it can allow you to specify the principle for which you are applying this RCP against. And this is different from SCP. I'm going to show you the SCP policy here as well. And you can see the SCP which we created earlier did not have the principal tag, right? And so that's a big difference between RCP and SCP in terms of the syntax. And if you have seen my earlier videos around IAM policy and resource policy, the same difference is also visible there. So I'll click on create policy here, and my RCP is now created. And from here, all I have to do is now I have to go to the account section and go to my CSM account 2 where my bucket is existing, and attach this RCP as a policy to this account, right? You can already see that my SCP is attached here, and I'm going to attach the RCP as well. And that's how it's done. That's how you create an RCP. That's how you attach it to an account. And with that done, let's go back to the command line and let's see how our cross account access is working now. Did the RCP solve that guardrail challenge that we started with, or is it still able to delete those objects? Let's go ahead and check that out. So run the remove command, and as you can see, it's not able to delete the objects now. It doesn't really give me an error saying that this is blocked because of RCP, and I think the reason for that is because this is an external request and it's not giving me that. But our RCP is working as expected. So the key takeaway here is that SCPs protect against IAM identities in your specific AWS organization only, whereas RCPs can help you prevent or protect against all identities, even external to your AWS organization, when that access is given via the resource policy. That's why when setting up guardrails for your organization, always remember to use both SCP and RCP. Right. Final point here to note is that RCPs only work for resource types which support resource-based policies, right? And that's why AWS only supports it for a limited set of AWS services only. And at this point, this list of services is right here from the AWS documentation page. This might increase to more services which support resource policies in the future. But that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. That's a wrap for this demo. Keep watching and keep subscribing to our videos to learn more about cloud security.